The governor of Maryland vetoed 2 eviction bills that would have made it harder for small mom and pop landlords to operate within the state. And I'll be going over facts and statistics about the truth behind the finances for the majority of landlords throughout the country and dispel the myths and rumors that are spread by tenants. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. Alright, so I have an interesting video for you today, and part of it, I have a short story about the eviction protections that were vetoed by the governor of Maryland, but the majority of this video I'm going to spend going over facts and statistics that have to deal with landlords, their finances. I want to get the truth out there, okay? A lot of people, they are saying a lot of things that are ridiculous to me, and it doesn't even come close to the truth. Okay, they're saying, hey, landlords are rich. Landlords can stand it when we can cut their rent back. We should be able to regulate how much they charge for rent. They shouldn't be able to do rent increases. They should never be able to evict. Well, you're putting a lot of landlords in a very, very bad financial situation when you do that, and you don't even understand the fact that, hey, the grand majority of landlords out there, they are operating with very, very small profits. In fact, there's a lot of landlords who don't make any income off of their properties. Okay? It's ridiculous when you think about it, but it's the truth. And the majority of landlords are small mom and pop landlords. So yeah, it's really interesting, these facts and statistics that I was able to come across, and I'm going to share them with you today. And a lot of landlords don't even know this information. So before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like and subscribe button, maybe leave a comment down below and let me know what you think, okay? Do you believe that the majority of people out there actually understand who landlords really are and, what we're doing, how much money we make, etc.? Or do you think the majority of people have this ridiculous vision in their head of, we're rich, sitting on the beach, drinking, martinis, while partying on our yachts, okay? Yeah, there's some landlords, a very small percentage, who are extremely wealthy, and I'm talking about billionaires here, but the majority of landlords aren't like that. And hey, maybe we are supplementing our retirement. Maybe we are, building a small business with it. Maybe we are regular middle class people such as myself. And all we want is to be treated with respect and not be, bunched up into a group of people and, forced to face all these ridiculous laws, rules, and regulations that make it darn near impossible for us to do business. So, getting into that topic, the first article I have today, it's coming from pewresearch.org, and it says, as national eviction ban expires, a look at who rents and who owns in the U.S. And this is coming out of August of 2021, so it's actually an older article. However, I'm not going to read the whole article because it has a lot of stuff about the renters in there. I'm just going to read the part that is of interest to landlords, okay? So let me get straight down into it, and it's in one of the later paragraphs, right? And it says, let me get down to it a little bit further down. Tax data on businesses that own rental property is harder to come by. However, that same HUD researcher has estimated that there are fewer than 1 million business entity landlords, adding that they likely own an average of more than 20 units, with many managing hundreds of units. Individual landlords, that's the small mom and pops, received $353.7 billion in rental income in 2018, which sounds like, and is, a lot of money. But as any business person knows, top-line revenue doesn't necessarily lead to bottom-line profit. Indeed, only about half of individual landlords reported net income in 2018, with the rest losing money on their properties. Such losses can, under certain conditions, be used to offset other taxable income. So, right there, they said that just half of landlords are actually reporting an income. Now, I made an income off of my rental properties last year, right? It wasn't nearly as big on paper as, you would think, because obviously there's depreciation involved when you file your taxes. However, right, I did have a small income from my rental properties. But there are a lot of landlords, and that's half of them, who have no income. And that's a bad thing. That's absolutely awful that there are so many landlords who aren't making money. I mean, that's not the reason people get into the rental property business. Now, keep in mind, this is income from the cash flow that the rents provide us. And this doesn't include things such as the appreciation that we're going to get if we resell the property, or the money that we pull out of it if we do a refinance or get a line of credit. So that isn't included in this amount, okay? So yeah, that's an interesting fact right there. But going into my second article, and this one is coming from a very good source, the National Association of Realtors, and it says, landlord statistics from the 2018 Rental Housing Finance Survey. So, I couldn't find an article with anything coming up to 2022. So this is about as good as I'm going to be able to get for now. Keep in mind that with inflation and with, costs going up so much, that some of these numbers are going to be a little bit dated, okay? But they're still very, very relevant to what I'm talking about every single day on my videos. So, getting into these statistics, let's just get into it. There's a wealth of publicly available information about renters, but there is relatively little data known about landlords who perform the important role of providing housing to the nation's 48 million renter households. Understanding the profile of landlords is important because any policy pertaining to renters also impacts landlords and their ability to provide rental housing supply. Currently, there is a moratorium on evictions to assist tenants, but this moratorium also impacts the ability of landlords to meet their own financial obligations and to continue operating viably. And this article is from September of 2020, so the nationwide CDC eviction moratorium hadn't been thrown out yet. But keep in mind, this is very relevant information, and when they published this article, it was trying to convey the message, hey, we need to end this eviction moratorium because a lot of landlords aren't going to make it. So obviously, the eviction moratorium nationwide is ended. There's a few, local or state moratoriums that are still going on, but the majority of us are out of that mess. But there's still other legislation such as good cause eviction protections, rent control proposals, etc., that can still put landlords in a mess. And when you hear these stats, you'll understand a little bit better why. So let's get straight into it. 48% of rental units are in properties with 1 to 4 units. Of the 48.3 million rental units in 2017, 48% of the units were in properties with 1 to 4 units, most of which are owned by individual and run by the owners. Okay, so that's a very interesting fact. Nearly half of all rental units in the entire country are in 1 to 4 unit properties. So when you see these giant apartment complexes, etc., you always think, well, that's where the majority of rentals are. No, they're just in small, either single family, duplex, triplex, or fourplexes, okay? And that's where half of all rental property units are located. And like they said, the majority of those are owned by individuals and run by the owners. So small mom and pop landlords, what I was talking about all along. Half of all rental properties are run by small mom and pop landlords. Okay, and they actually have a nice little graph here that does a breakdown of the percentage distribution of number of units, and I'll throw that up on the screen. And that way, the people watching this video can take a look at it. And it says that the percentage distribution of number of units within properties by number of units on property. And 35.5% are 1 unit. That means that more than a third of all rental property units out there are in single family homes. Okay, or I guess you could say condos and townhouses and maybe row houses and stuff like that as well, but individual units. Okay, so a third of all And, considering how many huge apartment complexes out there with, hundreds of units in them, that's actually surprising that there are so many single family rentals. But that does show you that, hey, mom and pop landlords are out there in mass renting their properties, and that the things that, you think that are only going to affect these big, huge mega landlords are going to affect small mom and pops as well. 41% of rental properties are owned by individuals. Individuals are the main types of owners of rental housing, accounting for 41% of the owners of all rental units. However, in properties with 1 unit and 2 to 4 units, individual owners accounted for 72.5% of all owners. LLCs, limited partnerships, and limited liability corporations account for more than half of owners in the properties where there are 25 units or more in a property. Yeah, and this is another good point right there, okay? 41% are owned by individuals, okay? So not by LLCs. However, you need to keep in mind that an individual can own an LLC, a single member LLC by themselves. So a lot of these LLCs are also individuals. I would be willing to bet that that would probably push up more than half of all rental properties out there are owned by individuals, okay? So, when you're out there and you're thinking, hey, this is a mega corporation that has billions of dollars, you could be dealing with a nice small middle class landlord who just happens to have an LLC under their name, which they own rental property under. 42% of rental properties are run day to day by the owners. In 42.3% of rental properties, the day-to-day managers are the owners. This is then an estimate of the share of housing units run by mom and pop landlords, which is generally understood as an owner who mainly does the day-to-day management of the business. Mom and pop landlords are more prevalent in properties with 1 to 4 units. In properties with 1 unit, 71% of those doing the day-to-day management were the owners. In properties with 2 to 4%, 77% of those doing the day-to-day management were owners. Nearly half of rental housing units are in properties that have 1 to 4 units. So yeah, these people are self-managing, okay? So you're talking about in single-family rentals specifically, that means that 71%, nearly 3 out of every 4 single-family houses that is being rented out there is being operated by a small mom and pop landlord who owns the property in their name and not under a corporation, and has, just a 1 unit, okay? That's how small a lot of landlords are, okay? This is important because when they pass these laws, guess who they're hurting? Who are they affecting? Okay, and no, it isn't BlackRock or Blackstone or whoever it is, these giant multi-billion-dollar corporations who are buying a lot of houses out there. So when they say, hey, we want to stop these landlords from being able to buy properties, they're stopping mom and pop landlords from being able to buy properties too, okay? 59% of properties have a mortgage or similar debt. More than half of properties have a mortgage or similar debt on them. The share of 1 unit properties with debt is lower at 39.2%. The more units in a property, the higher is the fraction with a mortgage on them. Of properties with 150 or more units, 80.7% of the units have a mortgage. So a lot of tenants don't realize this. A lot of tenants' rights advocates and activists, etc., don't know this either, right? But the majority of landlords have to pay a mortgage every month, okay? So when you go up to, the landlord, they're not getting to keep every single penny of your rent, okay? We have our mortgage. That is the biggest portion of where your rent money goes, right? Your utilities, our insurance, our property taxes, our maintenance costs, okay? There's some people who pay property management, such as myself. I have property management now. I no longer manage any of my properties. As I mentioned in one of my other videos, I've finally turned every single property I own over to property management, so I have to pay that every single month, regardless of whether I get rental income or not. Okay, and a lot of landlords are in the same boat as me. So when you suddenly say, hey, we're gonna cut off your ability to raise the rent like they do in cases of rent control, or you tell me that I can't evict a tenant who isn't paying rent, Well, you are putting me in financial distress. Okay, you need to understand that, because those bills, they do not stop coming every month. Even if I had forbearance on my mortgage, that doesn't stop me from needing to pay the property taxes and all the other bills. Okay. And then finally, 16.3% of tenants received Section 8 assistance in 2017. Landlords help provide affordable rental housing. Of all rental units, 16.3% had tenants that received rental assistance in 2017. In properties with at least 5 units, more than 25% of tenants received Section 8 rental assistance. Wow, that's a lot higher than I thought. Like, honestly, I thought it was less than 10%. So some of these stats, they even surprised me. Okay, this is crazy. And this here, oh yeah, there's one more thing that I want to point out before I get into the story about what's going on up in Maryland. It says average annual operating and capital expenses per unit, $830 a month in 2020 dollars. Okay, so landlords have operating and capital expenditure costs needed to maintain their buildings to keep them safe and decently livable for their tenants. These costs are passed on to tenants, but when tenants are not able to pay rent, the landlords have to spend for these costs, creating a cash flow problem. In 2017, the average annual operating expense per unit was $5,270. The average annual capital expenditure was $3,856, or a total of $9,126 per unit per year, or $760 a month. If that is inflation to 3% inflation cost per year, that is equivalent to $830 in 2020 dollars. And in 2022 dollars, I mean, it's probably closer to 900, maybe even over 900, because in the last year we had over 8% inflation, like 8.5%. So, keeping that in mind, you have to realize that, hey, if the costs went up nearly $100 per unit, due to inflation, well, guess what? The landlord has a right then to raise their rents $100 at least in order to cover those inflationary costs, okay? And actually, in some cases, you're going to have landlords who have costs that are much, much higher than that, and basically what I'm saying is that landlords should never be forbidden from raising their rents, and only if you look at each individual's financial situation, their loan terms, etc., would you even know whether a landlord deserves or needs a rent increase, okay? Oh man, so yeah, these are great statistics. I'm glad that I was able to find a lot of this, because I didn't even know a lot of this stuff, and it's important that the message gets out there. So the second article I have for you today, and I'm not going to read the whole article, but it's going over these eviction bills that were vetoed by the governor of Maryland, and it's coming from WUSA9.com, and it says, Hogan vetoes 18 bills, including ballot signature measure. And I'm just going to skip straight down, because they go over some of the other bills that were vetoed that have nothing to do with landlords and real estate, right? But I'm only interested in this stuff that really, that pertains to landlords. And I'm glad that this guy, he decided to go ahead and just veto these bills, because obviously, anything that's hurting landlords, I'm not in favor of. So it says here, the term-limited governor also vetoed 2 measures relating to evictions, including a bill to require a landlord to comply with the county's licensing regulations before filing for repossession of a property. The other state eviction proceedings for tenants awaiting a determination about rental assistance. Maryland already has some of the strongest tenant protection laws in the nation, and these bills impose additional burdens on small property owners who are already struggling to stay in business, Hogan said. And I completely agree with him. I'm glad that he did that. This thing about not being able to file for eviction unless you are licensed with the county. I mean, I heard about, I believe it was a Supreme Court case, and I can't remember which state it was, but it was a state Supreme Court case where they said, hey, no, a landlord, whether they're licensed or not, they have rights to their property. And, maybe he's taking that into consideration there. And the other one that says that you have to wait on a determination about rent assistance before you can file for eviction. No, that's ridiculous as well. Okay, that's just another thing that's going to allow tenants to stay in a property for months on end without paying rent. So I'm glad he got rid of those ridiculous bills that they were trying to pass. But hey, just keep in mind that these bills, they're going to keep coming up throughout the entire country, and that we have to stay vigilant and keep fighting against them.